Wherever you are, I'd like to invite you to stop what you're doing, put whatever you have in your hands down, maybe put your hands on your lap, feel your feet on the ground, and take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. After an extraordinarily hard year, we have made it to this moment. It is no small feat. It's a miracle, in fact. Tonight we usher in the holiest day of the year, a day on which we confront the fragility of life head on, a day that is supposed to jolt us and catapult us back into our lives with greater awareness, open-heartedness, and greater aliveness. Often, or at least I hope some of the time, Yom Kippur does just this. And as we hear the blast of the final shofar at the Ne'ilah service, we are fired up and ready to go. And we emerge from the holiday with the best of intentions to embrace life in its fullness and make each day count. And after typically a few weeks or months or perhaps even days, we usually return to our old habits and ways of being. We inevitably take loved ones for granted, daydream about the life we wish we had, or just feel burdened. Our renewed zest for life begins to fade. Tonight, I want to talk about a powerful practice that might help us hold the spirit of the holidays a little bit longer, that might aid us in our quest to live with greater awareness of the preciousness of each moment. And this is the practice of pausing, creating space for new feelings to emerge, new possibilities. Pausing even for a brief moment and even for just some of the time has the potential for a significant impact. In the words of Pema Chodron, Buddhist teacher and author, pause practice, which she defines as taking 3 breaths, can transform each day of your life. It creates an open doorway into the sacredness of the place in which you find yourself. If you pause enough, you can reconnect with exactly who you are, with the immediacy of your experience. Now, pause practice is not just a Buddhist or a modern mindfulness practice. It is foundational to our Torah and our tradition, quite literally from the beginning. On the 7th day, God ceased from all of the work of creation. God blessed the 7th day and declared it holy, Ki vo shavat mikol malakto, because on it God stopped from all of the work of creation. As Rabbi Sheila Peltz-Weinberg teaches, the fact that Shabbat comes after the creation of humanity is to teach us that pausing is not an option. Pausing is part of the plan. Yom Kippur is also known as Shabbat Shabbaton, the same Hebrew word, shavat, for ceasing, stopping, pausing. Thus, we might translate Shabbat Shabbaton as the day of ultimate cessation, or the day that is itself one long pause. Pausing is the primary work of the day. Pausing is how we get to transformation, to embracing life. This is true on Yom Kippur, but it is also true in every moment. There are many, many ways to speak about pausing, and so tonight I'm going to focus particularly on pausing as a tool to disrupt negative patterns and to enable us to feel more presence, more joy, and determination. I'm going to talk about it in 2 ways. Pausing as a way of waking up to our lives and to each other, that's first. And second, pausing as a way of facing what needs to be faced and discerning a path forward. First, pausing as a way of waking up to our lives and to each other. I share two stories to get us started on this. The first, it's late Friday afternoon. I take out 2 freshly made loaves of challah, and I place them on the table underneath a beautiful challah cover. I put a delicious chicken dish into the oven along with kugel and vegetables. I take out the white tablecloth, which is stained from Shabbatot and holidays. I've thought about replacing this cover, this tablecloth, but I can't because there are too many memories that I'm not ready to let go of. My children come to help me set the table. When everyone is ready and gathered, I light the candles. We sing Shalom Aleichem. We bless our children. My oldest child recites the long Kiddush, and I feel so proud. We wash our hands, sing a wordless melody. We recite motzi, we eat. Our guests that we have that evening add wisdom to our table, and I watch my children engaging meaningfully in dialogue. After dessert, we sing a song with our requisite table banging and offer a short blessing for the meal that we have just eaten together. And while there are many dishes to do, I rest for a moment, feeling deeply satisfied. The second story. It's Friday at 5:30. I text my husband, John, "Did you pick up challah?" John texts back a simple no. I reply, "Okay, I think we have 2 hamburger buns." 5 minutes later, I travel home and feverishly start to prepare food. It's 5:45. I'm looking around at all the cabinets and drawers, and I declare to no one in particular, we're out of grape juice. Oy, I guess we're just going to have to use lemonade this week, which is fine because the kids really don't even like grape juice. At 6:20, I turn to both my children and I say, "Shut off the device." For the 100th time in the last 10 minutes, shut it off. We are about to have Shabbat dinner. It's 6:30. I hear a whimpering. "Mom, I'm so hungry. I can't wait to eat. I can't do the blessings. I'm so hungry." John and I exchange a few knowing looks. I declare, "Okay, let's do the short version tonight. Candles, the one-line Kiddush, motzi, voila, dinner." 6:45. My teenager gets up from the table, to which I say, "You didn't ask to be excused." To which he says, "Well, can I be excused?" With desperation, I look back at him and say, "Can you play a family board game? Will you join us?" He responds, "No, I'm going to go to my room." I look at John with exasperation and I say, "Okay, you can be excused. Dinner is over. Shabbat shalom, everyone." The first story I shared is the vision of Shabbat that I set for myself when I was 23 years old, single and childless, living in Jerusalem and observing Shabbat in community. The second story is a scene from a recent Shabbat in the Grabelle Herrmann household. Admittedly, Shabbat is a challenge at this time in our lives, but what I want to say is this: what's worse than any given experience of Shabbat that I may have, what's worse is the fact that so often I am not even there at all. I'm not present with the people that I am most intimate with and that I love the most in the world, because instead I am living in a 22-year-old fantasy of what my Shabbat is supposed to look like, of how my partner is supposed to act, of how my kids are supposed to be. And it leads me to feeling depressed, dissatisfied, and deflated. And if that were not enough, my mind starts to spin and spin. And as soon as we have reached Hamotzi, I have questioned every decision I've ever made that could have led me into this terrible moment. However, once in a while, I am able to disrupt this well-established pattern with a pause. I step out of the drama of my life and I take a look at what's going on. When I pause and I recognize my fantasy for what it is, it no longer has hold on me. In an instant, where there was guilt and disappointment, empathy emerges. I recognize how hard it is for two busy working parents to make Shabbat in a meaningful way, especially when one of them has a job to make Shabbat for a whole community. I recognize that my teenager has a whole other set of priorities that are different than my own and are not necessarily better or worse. And then I tune in and I notice the sweet things that are happening around me. Someone says something funny, someone passes something in a kind way. And instead of feeling regret and self-pity, and that's really what I feel when I'm in that fantasy, instead of that, I feel grateful. How lucky am I to live this life with these three humans at the center of it? Pausing is so powerful. In an instant, we can wake up to our lives and the people in them. This notion has grounding in our sacred text too. It is well known that when it was time for God to find a leader to take the enslaved Israelites out of Egypt, that the divine one appeared in a burning bush, fire that was on a bush but not consumed. But a midrash adds another layer, telling us that there were others who passed by the burning bush and did not notice. Moses was the one who paused, turned, and took the sight of the burning bush, took in the sight of the burning bush. If we pause and awaken to what is in front of us, we, like Moses, might come to see that the ground on which we stand is holy. This place, this ground, this life. Now I want to talk about the second idea, pausing as a way of moving forward and discerning our path, facing what needs to be faced. And I start with a story from the Talmud. One time, Rabbi Gamliel was traveling on a boat in an expanse of water. And from a distance, he saw that another boat had shattered, completely shattered. Rabbi Gamliel was overcome with immense grief because on that boat was none other than the Torah scholar, Rabbi Akiva, one of the greatest scholars of all time, if not the greatest. A few hours later, Rabbi Gamliel disembarked from his boat onto dry land, and he looked ahead, and what did he see? It was none other than Rabbi Akiva himself running towards him, deliberating before Rabbi Gamliel about the intricacies of a particular Jewish law. With equal parts shock and delight, Rabbi Gamliel said to Akiva, "My son, who brought you up from this water? Who saved you?" And Rabbi Akiva replied, "A plank from the boat came before me. I grabbed it, and to every wave that came, I nodded my head until I reached the shore." An incredible story. And as I poured over this story, which has become very personally meaningful to me, I imagined all the steps that were not explicitly written into the parable, but all of the pauses that had to have been necessary for Rabbi Akiva to make his way to the shore. There had to have been a moment when the boat first shattered, when Rabbi Akiva bobbed up from the water, from the depths of the water, and I could see him thrashing around in the water to no avail and recognizing that if he continued to do that, he would never survive. Then I imagined that he paused. He looked around, and then he saw this plank. Holding onto that plank for dear life, he sees the waves coming at him again, and he has to make another decision, so he pauses. He can either fight the waves, or he can bend his head to allow himself to be carried to safety. Whether right now or at some point in our lives, we have all been Rabbi Akiva. We have all had our boats shattered, our best laid plans overturned, our hopes for the future swept under by tragedy or illness or loss or some significant interruption outside of our control. In fact, most of us have had this experience in the last 17 months. And if we don't pause, and if we continue to thrash around without discernment for the pathway forward, we might not make it through, physically or spiritually. A few years ago, I counseled a woman who, for a variety of reasons, became the sole caretaker of her ailing mother. When we first met, she shared that caregiving for her mother was enriching and satisfying. She felt like she was giving back to her mom after all of the love that she had received in her lifetime. But a few months later, I talked to this woman again, and she came back to me utterly depleted, exhausted, and burned out. We sat together for a while, and I just invited her to pause and just to take space to consider what it was that she needed to get through this difficult time. In the space of that pause, she realized that her sense of obligation was getting in the way of getting the help that she needed for her mom and for herself. A few weeks later, we met again. While she reported that the situation remained challenging, she also said to me that she felt so much better because she knew that everything she was doing was the best she could do. And most importantly, her mom and her were now enjoying each other's company again. They were laughing, they were smiling, they were looking at old photos and sharing memories. And then she turned to me and said, okay, now I just have to get through moment by moment. Moment by moment, wave by wave. When we are going through a hard time, that is often the most difficult time to pause. In fact, sometimes we will do everything possible to keep busy so we don't pause, so we keep so busy that we don't have to think about our situation. Yet it is precisely in those moments when we most need that pause, when we need to step outside of our situation and see clearly both the challenges and the lifelines, the planks that can carry us through. In those pauses, we might be able to learn to bend our heads at the tumultuous waves that are fighting against us and allow us to embrace life even when it is difficult, even and especially when it is difficult. I began in Genesis, sharing that pausing is the very design of creation. In Exodus, another formulation of the divine rest is articulated, saying, Uvayom hashvi'i shavat vayinafash. Vayinafash comes from the word nefesh, or soul. This phrase, which is very unique, can be translated perhaps as God stopped doing and was resold. Rabbi Alan Liu of blessed memory also played on this shared root of nefesh, soul, with nishama, breath, and translates this verse as God stopped and exhaled. We can learn from the divine modeling the power of stopping the action of our lives just by taking one breath. Tonight, we usher in a 25-hour period of pause. May we use it well. But tonight, I want to invite us to also consider that the practice of pausing is available not only in this cathedral of time of Yom Kippur, but in every single moment. May we find and cultivate the ability to step back from the action of our lives and simply be. And on the other side of that pause, may we be blessed to awaken to connection, love, joy, hope, steadfastness, and everything that we need to live our lives fully and deeply with meaning and with purpose. Gamar Chatima Tova, Shana Tova.